In 1969, you could walk into a Dodge dealership and buy a brand new car with an 18-inch nose cone and a rear wing taller than a toddler. Street legal. Built to do exactly one thing. 200 miles an hour. That's level 7. We start a lot lower, so by the end, tell me in the comments which level you'd actually park in your garage. Level 1. 1964 Pontiac GTO. This is where it all starts, and it starts with a loophole. In 1963, General Motors made a rule. No engine bigger than 330 cubic inches in a mid-size car. So Pontiac didn't make their 389 standard. They made it an option. A box you ticked for $296 because corporate can't ban what it never officially approved. John DeLorean founded the muscle car era on a technicality. 389 cubic inches, 325 horsepower, 348 if you paid for the triple carb setup. Pontiac thought they'd sell maybe 5,000. They sold 32,450. Read that again. They beat their own forecast 6 times over. And this is the recipe every car after it copied. Take a big engine, put it in a car too light for it, sell it to a 22-year-old. That's the whole formula. The GTO didn't break the rules. It proved the rules were the only thing holding everyone back. Level 2. 1968 Plymouth Roadrunner. By 1968, muscle cars had a problem. They were getting fat, chrome, carpet, consoles, options, price tags climbing every single year. The thing built to be cheap and fast was becoming neither. So Plymouth did the opposite of everyone. They stripped a car down to rubber floor mats and a taxicab bench seat. No chrome, plain hubcaps. If you wanted carpet, you paid extra. Most people didn't. Then they dropped in a 383, breathing through the big 440's heads and cam. 335 horsepower, and they put a sticker price on it of $2,896. Under $3,000, less than the average new car. This is the punk rock one. And the flex? Plymouth paid Warner Brothers $50,000 to license a cartoon Roadrunner. Then another $10,000 to build a horn that went beep beep. $60,000 on a joke. They projected 2,500 sales. They sold 45,000. Want the real monster? The Hemi was a $714 option. Almost nobody checked that box. About 1,000 people total. The ones who did were not playing. Level 3. 1969 Chevelle SS 396. Now the big boys pile in, and this is the one that put a big block in everybody's driveway. For $347 on the order sheet, Chevrolet turned a plain Chevelle into an SS 396. Tick the L78 box, and you got 375 horsepower of solid lifter big block. They sold 86,000 of these in 1969 alone. This wasn't a unicorn. This was the muscle car as a mass market product. But watch this number. That 375 horsepower, it's a lie. The exact same engine was rated at 425 horsepower in the 65 Corvette, and nobody touched a single bolt in between. Detroit was now underrating its own engines. On purpose, quietly, every year, to keep the insurance companies from losing their minds. The horsepower war had a second front nobody ever saw, a paperwork war. And one more thing. Notice the engine stops at 396. Why not bigger? Because GM still banned anything over 400 cubic inches in a mid-size car. Hold that thought. It comes back. Level 4. 1969 Mustang Boss 429. Ford got tired of losing to Chrysler in NASCAR, so they built a semi-Hemi 429 they nicknamed the Shotgun. One problem. It was so enormous, it physically would not fit inside a Mustang. So Ford didn't redesign the engine. They redesigned the car. Every Boss 429 left the assembly line as a plain Mustang shell. Then it got shipped to a contractor called Car Craft and rebuilt by hand. They cut the shock towers apart. They moved the battery to the trunk just to balance the weight of the thing. 1,358 of them. Built one at a time. Rated horsepower, 375. Actual horsepower, closer to 500. Another 100 horsepower lie, told to the same nervous insurance men. And here's the gut punch. The Boss. 429 never raced in a Mustang. Not once. The whole car existed for one reason. To make the engine legal for NASCAR where it ran in a Torino. And by the time Ford finished building enough of them to qualify, management had already shut the racing program down. They built a weapon, and it showed up after the war was already over. Level 5. 426 Hemi Dodge Charger RT. This is the engine that started the entire arms race, so it earns its own level. The 426 Hemi, They called it the elephant because it was enormous and it never forgot how to hurt you. In 1964, it walked into NASCAR, and Chrysler cars finished 1, 2, 3 at Daytona. It was so dominant that NASCAR did something almost unheard of. They banned it outright for the entire 1965 season. Then they told Chrysler the only way back in was to sell the thing to the public. So Chrysler shrugged, detuned it slightly, and dropped it into showroom cars, like the Charger RT, rated 425 horsepower. Real number, again, around 500. The option cost $1,000, a quarter of the price of the whole car. And in 6 years, they only ever built about 9,800 of them. This is the level where they banned it, stops being a figure of speech. They literally outlawed the engine. And Chrysler's response was to mail it to your house. Level 6, 1969. Yenko COPO Camaro 427. Remember that GM rule? No engine over 400 cubic inches in a Camaro. Maximum allowed, the 396. A Pennsylvania Chevy dealer named Don Yenko looked at that rule the same way the GTO guys did 5 years earlier. As a dare, he found the COPO system, Central Office Production Order, the boring back office channel meant for taxi fleets and police cars and special order paint. And Yenko realized he could use that same channel to order the factory to build him Camaros with the 427 it was forbidden to build. He made General Motors break its own rule on its own assembly line with its own paperwork. The cars came out looking like nothing. No 427 badges, no stripes, dog dish hubcaps. It looked like a car your aunt drove to church. Under the hood, the L72 427, rated 425 horsepower. And Yenko himself said that was nonsense. It was 450. How fast? On slicks, one ran the quarter mile in 11.94 seconds. The hand-built Boss 429, the one worth $500,000 today, ran a 14.1. The sleeper with the taxicab hubcaps was quicker than the Mustang. About 1,000 of these COPO Camaros got built. Yenko personally turned 201 of them into legends. The fastest street car of 1969 was ordered through a loophole meant for cop cars. Level 7, 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona. And then somebody decided a muscle car should hit 200 miles an hour on purpose. Dodge took a Charger and bolted on an 18-inch fiberglass nose cone and a rear wing that stood 23 inches tall enough to clear the dirty air, tall enough to block out a sunset. People thought it was a cartoon. It wasn't. It had a drag coefficient of 0.28, slipperier than cars built decades later. The aero was real, and it worked. In 1970, a Charger Daytona became the first car to ever officially break 200 miles an hour on a closed course. They only built 503 of them, and only because NASCAR's rules said you had to sell 500 to the public to go racing. About 70 came with the Hemi. The rest of the country looked at this winged spaceship sitting in a Dodge showroom and either fell in love or thought it was insane. And then the exact same thing happened that happened to every car on this list. It got too good. So after 1970, NASCAR effectively banned the winged cars, capped them at 305 cubic inches, which is a polite way of saying, please never do that again. The muscle car era hit its absolute peak with a car shaped like a missile, and it got there right as the people in charge decided 200 miles an hour was too fast to point at a grandstand. So look at how every one of these 7 actually died. The GTO's kids got priced out by insurance. The horsepower got underrated into fiction. The Hemi got banned. The wing cars got banned. And by 1972, the whole thing was strangled. Emissions laws, a corporate displacement cap, a stack of actuarial tables. Not one of them lost a race that mattered. They were never beaten on the street. They were regulated to death. The only thing in history that ever stopped a muscle car was a rule and a man with a clipboard. So that's your 7. Tell me in the comments which level is going in your garage. And then try to defend it. Like the video, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.